All right, what's good? Locked on Nets podcast, halftime impromptu. Hopefully, some people get to hop in here on the comments. Figured why not? The Brooklyn Nets are obviously trailing at the break. Going to touch in on a couple of highlights here before we back out of it and back into it in the third quarter. We'll obviously be coming to you on the post game live as well. Not live, but right after the post game. Doug Norrie and myself will be in breaking it down. Win or lose, we'll see how it pans out here for Brooklyn. But the big takeaways from the first half, which is probably not all too surprising, although from the standpoint that it shouldn't have taken till game number 4 to really be talking about effort and energy, right? I mean, some of the results still haven't been good. People be getting in hopefully on the chat here. We'll talk. We'll mix it up. This is impromptu. There's nothing really specific we want to get into, but effort and energy. I mean, they're losing this game, but at least you are seeing the hustle, the desire, right? I mean, you're down 0-2. You come back home for game number 3. This is what you wanted to see. It's just some sense of, man, if we can pull out this one game, we can get ourselves back into the series. We unfortunately did not get that in game number 3. We got it here in this one, and they're still struggling to hang with Boston. They're still struggling on a lot of different areas, for all the effort, and certainly surpassed his game 3 total 11 shot attempts for Kevin Durant. He's still struggling with some of the issues that we've talked about before. Chief among them, the turnovers, the careless basketball control. That has been a problem for him with consistency so far, and it continues to rear its head in this one. One thing, and I'll get into comments here basically in a second, but one thing that we're talking about when we spoke last was uh, Doug brought this up not as any excuse, but just as a when you aren't sure what's happening with a superstar player like Kevin Durant, you tend to go to your mind wants to go for an answer, and sometimes you wonder if he's injured. And again, Doug clarified it. I'll clarify it 1,000 times. It's not what we're saying, not saying that he's hurt, but also Richard Jefferson said it once on the broadcast. If you're watching on the Yes Network, that Kevin Durant is almost exclusively always going to his left when he's looking for his shot. He then doubled down. Ryan Rucco said, "What does that indicate to you?" And Richard Jefferson stopped himself short of saying, "I'm not going to speculate on it, but I'm just noticing that this is what the consistent possession by possession is showing to me," and he kept getting a bigger sample size of it. We'll get into that as we move away from this series, whatever happens on the results. But let's just talk about what you guys are bringing to the table here. Obviously, we need shot making. He's the best, let's say, effing mid-range shooter. They can't help off of him. Everyone's mixing it up here as far as what we're seeing from this game and what we want to see more of in the second half. Why is Steve Nash not playing Aldridge in this series? Well, listen, we've talked about this before. It's the give and take. Listen, go back to game number 3. What'd you really like? As we're seeing some stats come up here. Nets are out shooting 51-43 from the field. They're shooting narrowly ahead of in 3-point from beyond the arc as well. Last game we saw a little flash from Blake Griffin. You get inside the plus minus. It's kind of a net neutral. You saw a little bit of him here in this one as well. And people start to say, well, why not more of this, right? The problem is that there's still the limitations to his game, just like with LaMarcus Aldridge. For all that he's going to do for you potentially offensively, you're still going to run into just the same problems over and over again. Now, by the way, as they have the stats up in the background here, 7 points, 2 of 5 from the field for Kyrie, just 3 points. So now in a game when Kevin Durant is being more aggressive, when he's forcing the issue for good or bad, whatever the results may be, he's going for it. Now you've got Kyrie Irving playing a more passive game. Doug mentioned this, I think, coming out of game number 2, where Kyrie just seemed to disappear for stretches. So understanding sometimes you just want to see something different because what you have seen has not been working. And I'm bringing up here Dark Crow because Aldridge is not someone that can handle things on the defensive end. Now, you can say the counterpoint to that as well. They're struggling defensively anyway. What difference does that make? He gives you offensive upside. I said this pre-game a little bit, and Doug mentioned it in game 3. They finally went to the smaller ball lineup. I think the non-Claxton minutes need to turn around and be the smaller ball lineup, surround Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving with shooters, and just live with what's going to happen defensively. Try to keep your firepower. And you're seeing more of that in this game. And you're also seeing the results that you're still going to struggle. You're still going to give up the outside shots. You're still going to find that a team that we think, say, going back to the regular season, it's a team that when they try to play more aggressive and they try to ratchet up the intensity, there are times when it ends up also creating some detrimental pieces like the turnovers, like some bad rotations defensively, communication, etc. But at least you get to see this from them. Effort, energy, hustle. That's all you're asking for. And again, not all you're asking for from the standpoint of you have superstars and you have big expectations for this season, but more just you want to see that these guys care. And we talked about in the post game. We'll talk about it again in this one. Overall, though, just to round out the box score here, and we're gonna go until they come back from the break. You can of course find us as soon as the game's over. Doug and I'll be getting on. We'll break it all down. We'll get it up and posted as quickly as we can, as we always like to do. But the problem you probably say in the numbers here too is remember you're trailing in this game in spite of leading in key categories like field goal percentage. Overall, when we talk about just the team stats out of this one, want to make sure we just touch on the fact, obviously the free throw shooting. Obviously, we know that Nicholas Claxton is a key component to that. You got to live with it. You're drawing fouls. His shooting is going to be his shooting. We can't come out of this game saying Nicholas Claxton needs to be a better free throw shooter. It just needs to be that on you got to keep putting the pressure on the Boston defense and hopefully creating some other opportunities in there as well. 46 though. So this is the problem, right? Brookyln outshot them from the field from a percentage standpoint, 51-43. Boston had 9 more shot attempts in the first half of this game. Obviously, the free throw discrepancy from a make standpoint hurts you. The rebounding is 25-17 in favor of Boston as well. And then you get into the turnovers, 8-7. I mean, those numbers are equal. The fouls are equal. The points in the paint are relatively close. The fast break points are in the Nets' favor by 3. It is what it is, but you like the effort, you like the energy, and hopefully we get a better look here coming out of the second half and they can try to make a push here. But it's going to come down to Kyrie Irving stepping up his game. You need both superstars to play simultaneously well together. Blake, again, just giving it for us all. Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, we talk about, right? So we were having this discussion. Drummond, we were shocked. I mean, Doug exchanged a text. Can't believe that Drummond was out there starting, but you can use Blake Griffin. You can use these other bodies. It's still going to come down to the key players need to play their best. The Dragic trip got me mad. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, listen, and the problem with a moment like that in this particular game is that it's miserable and it's terrible and it's a missed call and then it goes the other way and he gets called on the trip and the foul and all that exchange. And you see how irate Steve Nash is and how frustrating it is. But guess what? Sometimes the big frustrations boil over when you're down 0-3 and you feel like you haven't done your best in the first 3 games leading up to it. So the reality is you're down 0-3. The reality is you just want to kind of give any indication to the fan base, right? That to the fan base that this may not end up going the way that we intended, but we're going to give you everything that we have. Is it a couple of games too late? Obviously, certainly is. But we will see if they can make it back here in the second half. Obviously, the 2-for-1 specials that we also saw that were frustrating as well. Coming back out of the break here now, I remember when Drummond was on the Pistons, no one could stop him. Yeah, well, there's some different ways to slice that pie. We will be back in, everybody. Thank you for hopping in. If you did, hopefully this was fun. Try to do this a little bit sooner. Obviously, if there ends up being a game 5. We just want to ramp up and give you content as much as we possibly can. We'll do more of this kind of stuff, live interaction with you guys who have been fantastic all season long, excuse me. We'll try to do it going into the regular season. See how Brookyln can come back from the 8-point deficit as the third quarter gets underway and be right back in, live in on the chat when we break this game down on the post game on the Locked On Nets podcast, obviously with myself, Adam Armbrecht, and Doug Norrie. My friends, we will be back again 24 game minutes from now.